Have you ever scrolled through your phone, looked at someone else's life, and felt a heavy drop in your stomach? Not because you wished them ill, but because in that moment, their life seemed brighter than yours, their smile wider, their achievements bigger, their path clearer. It's subtle at first. A quick glance at a vacation photo, a colleague's promotion announcement, a friend's new relationship, and suddenly, without meaning to, you measure yourself against them. You think, am I falling behind? Why don't I have that? What's wrong with me? This is the toll of comparison. Not the light comparison that pushes us to grow, but the heavy, gnawing comparison that makes us feel less than. Carl Jung once wrote that the greatest suffering of the human soul is not outer misfortune, but inner division. Comparison creates exactly that, a split inside us. The self we are versus the self we think we should be. Think about it in your own life. Maybe you see a friend starting a business and suddenly your stable job feels small. Maybe you hear about someone buying a home and your rented apartment feels like failure. Maybe you see perfect photos of couples online and your relationship, with all its flaws, feels inadequate. None of this happens consciously. It creeps in. It seeps into the cracks of everyday life. And soon, instead of living your story, you're trapped in someone else's. Psychologist Erich Fromm once said, "Man is the only creature whose existence is a problem he has to solve." Comparison turns this problem into a burden. Instead of asking, "How can I live well?" we ask, "How can I measure up?" And the cost is heavy. When you compare yourself constantly, joy shrinks. The things you once felt proud of, your progress, your choices, your small victories, suddenly seem worthless next to someone else's highlight reel. Your own story begins to look like a draft, while everyone else seems to have already written their masterpiece. This is the psychology of shame. Because comparison rarely lifts us. It usually lowers us. We don't just admire others, we diminish ourselves. Consider an everyday scene. You wake up, reach for your phone, and before your feet even touch the ground, you've already compared your life to 5 strangers on Instagram. Someone's wedding, someone's fitness journey, someone's new house. The day hasn't even started and already you feel behind. Or at work, a colleague presents their project with confidence. You feel your own efforts shrink, as though your value depends on how you stack up. Or in friendships, a friend shares good news. You smile, you clap, but a quiet voice whispers, "Why not me?" These moments may seem small, but repeated daily, they carve deep wounds. Here is the paradox. Comparison is built into us. Humans are social creatures. From the time we are children, we look to others to understand who we are. It's how we learn to speak, to walk, to behave. But what once guided us becomes a trap when every glance outward becomes a judgment inward. Jung spoke of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are. But comparison blocks this path. Instead of asking, "What is mine to become?" we ask, "How do I measure against them?" And so we lose touch with our own essence. We trade authenticity for endless measuring. If you've felt this, you're not weak, you're not alone, you're human. But here is the danger. When comparison dominates, you stop seeing yourself clearly. You see only fragments, like a shattered mirror, reflecting everyone else but distorting you. And soon, you believe the distortion. You believe you are behind. You believe you are less. You believe you are unworthy of your own life. This is the toll of constant comparison. Not just envy, not just frustration, but the slow erosion of self-trust. So let me ask you, when was the last time you compared yourself to someone else and felt lighter afterward? When was the last time it brought you real peace? chances are it didn't. Because comparison rarely ends in peace. It ends in pressure. You scroll, you sigh, you put your phone down, and instead of gratitude for your own life, you feel restless. Instead of contentment, you feel emptiness. Instead of wholeness, you feel split. And the more you compare, the more addictive it becomes. Like chasing a shadow you'll never catch. This is why it matters. Because comparison is not a harmless thought, it is a pattern that shapes how you live. If left unchecked, it can turn your whole life into a race you never signed up for. Always running, never arriving, always measuring, never enough. And here's the truth. The people you compare yourself to, they are comparing themselves to you, to others, to invisible standards that no one can ever fully reach. The race is endless, and no one wins. So if this resonates with you, if you've ever looked at someone else's life and felt yourself shrink, pause, take a breath, and know this: you are not the only one. Comparison is part of being human, but living in comparison doesn't have to be. Because there is another way. In the next part, we'll explore why comparison takes such a strong hold on us. What hidden fears, what unmet needs drive us to measure our worth against others, and how, by understanding these roots, we can begin to loosen the grip of comparison and step back into the truth of our own lives. Why does comparison cut so deep? Why is it that even when we know social media is fake, or that our colleagues' success doesn't diminish ours, we still feel small? It isn't just habit, it isn't just culture, it is psychological. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries both light and shadow. The shadow is made up of all the parts of ourselves we cannot or will not accept. And when we see those qualities in others, something stirs. A confident friend may awaken the shadow of our own insecurity. A wealthy neighbor may awaken the shadow of our hidden envy. A beautiful stranger may awaken the shadow of our own self-doubt. Comparison, in this light, is projection. We don't just see them, we see the parts of us we've buried. And often, we mistake the reflection for reality. Take a simple example. A woman sees her colleague receive praise. Instead of thinking, "Good for her," she thinks, "Why not me?" The praise given to the colleague is not the problem. It is the shadow of her own unacknowledged need for recognition. Or consider a man scrolling through Instagram. He sees a friend's vacation photos, sunlight, beaches, happiness. He feels restless. But the problem isn't the friend's trip. It's the shadow of his own longing for freedom, for rest, for play. Needs he has suppressed in favor of constant work. In both cases, the comparison doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. The outer image awakens the inner absence. Psychologist Gabor Mate often says, "The biggest stress in life is the gap between who we are and who we think we should be." Comparison widens that gap. Every photo, every promotion, every smile we see in others, if it hits a tender shadow in us, becomes proof that we are not enough. But here's the paradox. The person you're comparing yourself to is carrying their own shadows too. That friend with the perfect marriage may feel lonely inside. That colleague with a successful career may cry in secret from exhaustion. That influencer with a perfect body may wake up every day filled with shame. You cannot see their shadows, and they cannot see yours. So each of us compares our messy inner world to the polished surface of someone else's. But comparison doesn't only come from within, it is also inherited. As children, many of us were compared before we could even speak for ourselves. Why can't you be more like your sister? Look at how well the neighbor's son is doing. Other kids don't act like this. These words, small as they may seem, carve deep grooves. We learn early. My value depends on how I measure up. Kim John Payne, in his work on parenting, speaks of how constant evaluation robs children of joy. A child doesn't need to be the best. They need to be seen. But when parents, teachers, or peers measure them constantly, the child learns to live on a scale rather than in a story. And so, by adulthood, the pattern is set. The inner critic is already trained. You don't need someone else to compare you. You do it to yourself. Now add modern culture, social media, advertising, corporate environments, all built on the same fuel: comparison. Instagram thrives on showing you lives that look better. Companies thrive on making you feel inadequate, so you buy more. Workplaces thrive on ranking employees against one another. It's not your imagination. You're living in a system that profits from your comparison. But here's the truth. Even if the world around you thrives on comparison, you do not have to. Let's bring this back down to earth. Think of the last time you compared yourself to someone. Maybe a friend's success, maybe a stranger online. Ask yourself, what exactly did I feel? Was it envy? Was it sadness? Was it shame? And beneath that, what was the shadow? What part of yourself felt unseen, unloved, unacknowledged? Because that is the root. Comparison is not about them. It is about you. It is about the places inside you still waiting for recognition. This is why Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Comparison is painful, but it can also be a teacher. It shows us where we long for growth. It reveals where we have disowned parts of ourselves. It shines light on the gap between who we are and who we want to be. The problem isn't comparison itself. It's what we do with it. If we stay stuck, it drains us. If we use it, it can guide us. But first, we need clarity. Because until you understand the roots of your comparison, until you see the shadows beneath it, you will be its prisoner. You will scroll, sigh, shrink, and repeat. So in this part, we've uncovered why comparison feels so heavy. It touches our shadows. It awakens old childhood wounds. It is fueled by a culture designed to keep us measuring. But awareness alone is not enough. In the next part, we'll explore the turning point. How to recognize comparison in the moment. How to catch it before it takes over. And how to slowly shift from shrinking into envy to expanding into authenticity. Because the antidote to comparison isn't pretending it doesn't exist. It's learning to use it wisely, so it no longer uses you. If this journey eases something inside you, stay with us. Subscribe, and each step will bring a little more clarity. Thank you. We've seen why comparison digs its claws so deep, how it rises from the shadows inside us, from childhood patterns, from a culture that profits on our insecurity. But here's the real challenge. What do you do when it happens? You're scrolling online, or sitting in a meeting, or chatting with friends. Then suddenly, the feeling hits you. They're ahead. I'm behind. What then? Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Comparison thrives in the unconscious. It sneaks in, takes over your body, and you believe it is simply reality. So the first step is awareness. You need to catch it in the moment. That's easier said than done, but here's how it looks. Imagine you see someone's vacation photos. Your chest tightens. Your mind whispers, "Why can't I live like that?" Instead of spiraling, pause. Label it. Say quietly to yourself, "This is comparison." By naming it, you interrupt its power. It is no longer just a mood washing over you. It becomes something you can observe. Psychologist Kim John Payne describes this as giving shape to what is otherwise invisible. Once you name the feeling, you no longer drown in it. You can stand beside it instead of inside it. This doesn't erase the pain, but it gives you a choice. The second step is to ask, what does this comparison reveal about me? Remember, comparison is always a mirror. If someone's success stings, it might reveal your own longing for growth. If someone's appearance triggers you, it might reveal the parts of your body you haven't learned to accept. If someone's happiness irritates you, it might reveal the joy you've denied yourself. Every pang of comparison is a clue. The question is, will you follow it? Let's bring this down to earth. A young man sees his friend post about running a marathon. He feels a sudden wave of envy. At first he thinks, I'm lazy, I'm weak. But then he pauses. He realizes the comparison isn't about his friend. It's about his own longing for health, for discipline, for vitality. That pang becomes information. This is something I want for myself. Or a woman sees her colleague present confidently at work. Her stomach sinks. Her first thought, she's better than me. But when she catches the comparison, she notices, what I really want is to feel confident in my own voice. Again, the comparison becomes a teacher. The third step is to shift from scarcity to abundance. Comparison always whispers, if they have more, you have less. But this is not true. Their success does not steal yours. Their happiness does not reduce yours. Their light does not dim yours. Carl Rogers reminded us, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And the same is true here. When you accept that someone else's joy does not diminish yours, you open space to grow into your own. Here's a simple practice. The next time comparison strikes, try this reframe. Instead of saying, I can't have that, say, they show me what's possible. A friend buys a house. Instead of shrinking, think, they prove it can be done. A colleague gets promoted. Instead of despairing, think, this shows there is space to rise. An acquaintance looks joyful. Instead of resenting, think, this reminds me joy is real, and I can seek it too. You're not stealing their light, you're using it to find your way. But this shift takes practice, and practice means small steps. So here's something you can try today. When you feel the pang of comparison, stop and breathe. Then write down one thing you already have that you once longed for. It could be a job, a relationship, a home, a skill, even a friendship. Remind yourself, I have my own victories too. This small act pulls you back from the endless race. It grounds you in gratitude, which is the antidote to envy. Comparison will always knock on your door. But you don't have to invite it in. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to let it sit at your table. You can meet it at the threshold, name it, ask what it's showing you, and then choose. Will I let this shrink me, or will I let it grow me? Because here is the deeper truth. Comparison doesn't only wound, it can also guide. It shows you the places where you long for more, the shadows you need to integrate, the gifts you are ready to claim, but only if you catch it before it takes over. So in this part, we've learned to notice comparison in the moment, name it, see the shadow beneath it, and reframe it as a teacher rather than a thief. But awareness and reframing are only the beginning. In the next part, we'll step into action. Because if comparison keeps you small, then the antidote isn't only inner reflection, it's outer movement. It's learning to live in a way that breaks the cycle, so that you are no longer trapped in measuring, but freed to become who you truly are. You've seen how comparison works. You've caught it in the moment. You've named it, reframed it, even asked what it reveals about you. But now comes the real test. How do you live differently so that comparison no longer rules your life? Carl Jung believed individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires stepping out of inherited scripts. And comparison is one of the oldest scripts there is. It is written into our childhood, reinforced in schools, magnified by culture, and now amplified endlessly by social media. To break the cycle, you need more than awareness. You need new patterns. Let's start with environment. If every time you scroll, you feel smaller, what does that tell you? It tells you the environment is stacked against you. We like to think willpower is enough. But willpower bends under constant pressure. The design of your environment matters more. So one of the simplest, most powerful steps is this. Change what you feed your mind. Unfollow accounts that trigger constant envy. Mute voices that make you shrink. Fill your feed with people who inspire instead of diminish. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You're not obligated to expose yourself to poison every day. Second, create anchors of your own values. Comparison thrives when your compass points outward. You measure yourself against others because you've lost touch with what you actually value. So write it down. Literally, take a page and write, what actually matters to me? Maybe it's kindness. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's stability, love, health, or learning. Once you write it, you have a different ruler. You stop asking, how do I measure up against them? And you start asking, am I living true to myself? Erich Fromm argued that modern humans are trapped between freedom and conformity. We long to be free, but the fear of standing alone drives us back into comparison. So we copy, we compete, we shrink into sameness. The antidote is to stand firm in your values. When you know your why, comparison loses its grip. Third, practice self-compassion. Sounds soft, doesn't it? But it is radical. Because every time comparison rises, shame rides with it. You're not enough. You're behind. You'll never catch up. And shame is a fire that burns silently. Self-compassion is water on that fire. It's the voice that says, yes, I feel envy right now. Yes, I feel small, but that does not mean I'm worthless. It means I am human. This is not indulgence. This is survival. Because without compassion, you will fight comparison with more judgment, adding shame to shame. So let's make it practical. When you feel yourself spiraling, place your hand over your chest and say softly, this is hard right now, and that's okay. I'm enough, even in this moment. Try it once, and it may feel awkward, but do it often, and it will begin to rewire your inner dialogue. Fourth, act into your own life. Comparison keeps you watching. It keeps you scrolling, measuring, waiting. The cure is action. Start small. Write the first page of the book you've wanted to write. Take the first walk toward the health you desire. Apply for the job that excites you. Call the friend you've been missing. Because every step you take into your own life is a step away from envy. It is harder to compare when you are busy creating. Here's a story. A woman compared herself constantly to her sister, who seemed to have the perfect career. Every holiday dinner was a silent torture. But then, she stopped measuring success in terms of salary or status. She wrote down her true values: connection, creativity, balance. And she began painting again, something she had loved as a child. Did her sister stop being successful? Number. But the weight of comparison began to lift because she was living her own values, not someone else's. Finally, community. Comparison thrives in isolation. Alone, your mind twists into endless loops. But when you share with trusted friends, the shame dissolves. Because when someone else says, "I've felt that too," the burden halves. This is why therapy, groups, or simply honest conversations matter so much. Comparison grows in silence. It shrinks in the light. So let's gather these threads. To break the cycle, you need environments that support, not trigger. Values that ground, not drift. Compassion that softens, not shames. Actions that create, not just consume. Communities that connect, not isolate. None of this is instant. It is a practice. But each small step chips away at the prison of comparison. So ask yourself tonight, what is one small action I can take to step out of measuring and into living? Maybe it's unfollowing one account. Maybe it's writing one value. Maybe it's reaching out to one friend. Maybe it's creating one thing, however small. Because these little acts are not little. They are the beginning of freedom. In the next and final part, we'll bring this home. We'll talk about what life feels like when you finally stop living as a reflection of others and begin to stand fully in your own light. And we'll end with an invitation, a call to step into that freedom, starting today. There comes a moment when comparison loses its power. Not because the world has changed, not because others have stopped achieving or showing their highlight reels, but because you have changed the way you see. Imagine walking into a room full of people. In the past, your eyes would scan, searching. Who looks better? Who is more confident? Who has achieved more? Your stomach would tighten. Your mind would start keeping score. And before you even spoke, you already felt behind. But now, after the work of awareness, compassion, values, and action, you walk in differently. You still notice people, but you no longer shrink in their presence, because you know their story is not your story, and your story is no less worthy. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Comparison keeps you from that privilege. It keeps you half alive, always glancing sideways, never fully inhabiting yourself. But when you stop measuring and start living, you reclaim that privilege. You become, at last, your own person. This doesn't mean you'll never feel envy again. Of course you will. You're human. But envy will no longer define you. Instead of spiraling, you will pause. You will ask, what is this showing me about what I desire? And then you'll take a step into your own life. That is the difference. Not the absence of comparison, but the transformation of it. Think about what this shift could mean for you. Imagine celebrating your friend's success without secretly feeling smaller. Imagine scrolling through social media and not collapsing into self-doubt. Imagine making choices based not on others' approval, but on your own values. That is freedom. That is what it feels like to stand in your own light. But here's the truth. It takes practice. Daily practice. You will slip, you will stumble, and that's okay. Because each time you catch yourself, you are building strength. Each time you redirect, you are rewiring your story. Each time you choose self-acceptance, you are taking back what comparison stole. So let this be your invitation. Start small, but start today. Write down your values. Unfollow one account that makes you feel less. Celebrate one choice that was yours alone. Be kind to yourself when envy rises. And share your story with someone who will understand. Because every little act matters. Every little act is freedom. If this resonated with you, don't stop here. Healing the wounds of comparison is a journey. And each step brings more clarity, more ease, more strength. The next video will take you deeper. We'll explore how to transform guilt into resilience, how to make peace with your hidden shadow, and how to step into relationships without the weight of constant measuring. Perhaps the next video will bring you the clarity you've been waiting for. Perhaps it will remind you that you're not alone in this. Or perhaps it will simply give you one phrase, one image, one shift that makes your life a little lighter. So don't leave it here. Take the next step. Watch the next episode. Because the sooner you stop living in comparison, the sooner you can start living as yourself.